It was the year when a secret vault just didn't pay. Rappers shouted, "Walk this way," and a mayor told us, "Make my day." Here are the 10 most beautiful, awesome, deadly, outrageous, monumental, rip-roaring, powerful, disastrous, exciting stories of the year. Who can forget 1986?
This is gonna be radical.
Moscow stunned the world by announcing an accident at one of its nuclear power plants.
Listen, a lot has been said about Chernobyl. Lies. All lies.
To this day, second biggest meltdown in history after the Clinton campaign.
There were actually 2 fires in one reactor, and the second fire blew off the roof of the reactor, and that's the one which really led to the full meltdown.
The Soviets desperately tried to sweep this under the rug, but it's very difficult to do when the rug is melted.
The terrifying death toll following the world's worst nuclear accident at Chernobyl continues to climb tonight.
Nearby residents said that they had a metallic taste in their mouth. That was the beginnings of radiation sickness.
By the time you begin getting severe headaches and vomiting and having real severe signs of radiation sickness, it's too late.
So finally, after 36 hours, they announced an evacuation of a 20-mile perimeter. Probably should have been more than that.
An entire city basically went extinct overnight. And I mean, it was literally, you didn't even have time to pack.
In the 2 weeks following this disaster, more radiation escaped from this plant into the atmosphere than both the atomic explosions over Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
First word of the trouble came from Sweden, where officials thought one of their own plants was in trouble.
The extent of the radiation was first noticed by countries outside of the Soviet Union that were being affected by it.
The Russians made a brief 20-second announcement telling their citizens and the world that there was an accident at Chernobyl. That's all.
It's all fine, situation normal. I'm gonna get some people with mops. It's fine. It's all good. Don't worry.
It wasn't until weeks or months or even years later that we knew the extent of the damage.
If you want to find one of the perfect examples of how a communist government keeps things under wrap, look at that Chernobyl accident.
Hands across America. A very grand idea. A great idea, certainly on paper.
The idea was to get Americans to create an unbroken chain of people holding hands all across America to raise $50 or $100 million for charity.
It's like the biggest game ever of Red Rover, send poverty right over.
3, 2, 1.
It was set to take place on Sunday of Memorial Day weekend. The celebrities got involved. Michael J. Fox, you had Brooke Shields, even George Burns.
You got nuns and Hell's Angels holding hands together. That alone is a Polaroid moment.
My fiance and I went to the space in front of the White House because we knew that President Reagan and Nancy Reagan were going to be linking hands.
In Canada, we were also jealous, but we weren't invited to a lot of things.
The organizers say that the line of hands stretched unbroken across New Jersey, too.
I assumed that it really was going to be an unbroken line of humans across the country, which would be, I guess, kind of cool, but they didn't even have that.
There were large swaths of the country that went unfingered because there just weren't enough hands to bridge the gaps.
So the organizers instead used ribbons and ropes, and it's like, okay, nobody's there, but they're there emotionally.
If they had gone straight across the country like they should have, the 5 million people would have done it. But you got to go through all these cities. You're welcome, Memphis.
It's like you didn't have to hit bullseye. As long as you hit the dartboard, it's like, yeah, it's the 80s. Why not, man? Just sprinkle some fireworks on it. It's cool.
Good cause to help the homeless, the poor. I think it's a good idea to help people in America also.
In the end, it only netted $15 million, a far cry from the 50 or 100 that they wanted to make.
I guess they were too busy holding hands to reach in their pockets.
What they didn't take into account is 64% of Americans are germ freaks.
Touching all those hands, I couldn't get there.
Hands Across America could have made so much more money if they just used it as a Purell commercial.
We probably would benefit from some of those big 80s ideas nowadays.
Maybe they should try again. Let's do it again. Hands Across America, too.
We don't even do eye contact across America, let alone hands.
I have an idea. Instead of doing Hands Across America, how about we do food banks in your neighborhood?
Well, it appears the voters in Carmel, California have made Clint Eastwood's day by electing him mayor.
Clint Eastwood, mayor of Carmel, California. How great was that?
You talking to me, punk?
Reagan was president, so the fact that another actor was jumping in made sense.
So Carmel, tiny town. Population 4,500 residents, and it was kind of stuck in the past. I mean, this place made Mayberry look like the big city.
Sleepy town, bed and breakfast place where everyone knows your name.
Eastwood was liked by many of the townspeople. It was the sticklers at town hall that he didn't get along with.
Clint had a disagreement with the way the town was being run, and he was up against the local politicians.
They have these insane bylaws where if you want to sell ice cream, well, guess what? That's not allowed within the city limits.
You couldn't buy ice cream in Carmel by the Sea, which is ironic because Carmel by the Sea sounds like a flavor of ice cream.
In the movies, when you mess with Clint Eastwood, he shoots you.
So he threw his hat in the ring at the last minute. Not quite as romantic as strapping on his gun.
This was big news. This was everywhere.
In Carmel, you have a two-term mayor in office, Charlotte Townsend, and she hears that Clint Eastwood is running against her.
Who the heck was going to vote against Dirty Harry knowing you had to live next door to him?
He's the new mild-mannered mayor.
So Eastwood wins in a landslide, 2,166 to 799. That is not including the orangutan.
It's a drinking story for the rest of her life that all her friends are like, yeah, tell them about that time you thought you were going to beat Clint Eastwood in the election.
A celebrity mayor did change the town a little bit. You know, it was less quiet than it used to be. Somebody opened the Clintsville gift shop. The local Hyatt Regency actually adopted the slogan, "Make my stay."
Although the thing is, honestly, nobody wants to eat at a hotel restaurant where the slogan is, "Do you feel lucky, punk?"
At the end of his term, he walked away. He was done. I mean, I guess there was only so many things you can do. You open a couple of ice cream stores and my job is done here.
It's time for a Who Can Forget pop quiz. What 1986 championship team recorded a hit song that received a Grammy nomination? Was it A, the Boston Celtics, B, the Chicago Bears, or C, the New York Mets? The answer is B, the Chicago Bears. Jim McMahon, William Refrigerator Perry, and the rest of the team recorded the Super Bowl Shuffle, nominated for Best R&B Performance by a Duo or Group.
The Super Bowl Shuffle was the worst song ever, but still really catchy. And even if you hated the Bears, you still couldn't help but sing along.
The mystery of Al Capone's vaults.
Ay vey, Al Capone's vault.
It was huge.
This made Geraldo a household name.
I mean, Geraldo is an icon. I mean, he's not as big of a celebrity as his mustache, but he is an icon.
They said, we've got a special we want you to host. We've located in the Hotel Lexington in the south side of Chicago what we believe to be Al Capone's vaults. They were going to open it on live TV.
The advanced publicity for this was everywhere.
There was massive interest in this.
Everyone wanted to know what was in that vault.
Think about this, 30 million people tuned in. Geraldo knew exactly what he was doing.
This 2-hour live broadcast that was going out not only coast to coast, but to 16 countries around the world were all tuned in.
They had workers trying to blast through this concrete all night long while they went back and forth to these little documentary packages.
They really milked you through 2 hours of buildup that almost made you think there had to be something there.
Just like on the edge of your seat, and then we'll be right back after this. Almost
8 minutes to the hour, but we've got another wall in there.
Okay, when are you going to break the wall? And this, and then to commercial. Okay, break the wall. Give me another beer. I can't take it anymore.
So we blew the wall, and lo and behold, the damn thing is empty.
We had no real idea what we'd find inside. As it turns out, we haven't found very much.
All that buildup for nothing.
Geraldo Rivera proved live TV isn't always the best option. Also, we know from Storage Wars, you gotta plant some stuff in there.
All right, I'm going. I'll see you. Good night. I'm sorry.
I went over to the Mexican restaurant, started drinking tequila.
Most people would be like, there goes my career. But it only made him more successful.
22 job offers. I went from unemployed and unemployable to the hottest commodity in media.
That is magic. Who else survives that? Not many.
I parlayed that into my daytime talk show that ran for 12 years. I'm still spending that money.
We got a treasure out of this. It just wasn't money in cash. It was Geraldo. Like, we got Geraldo.
1, 2, 3, 4! Walk This Way was a massive song.
Aerosmith and Run DMC. Okay.
Seriously, if it came on right now, I'd get up and dance.
Aerosmith basically is a dead band at this point. 70s was great. The 80s, they can't get their footing.
Steven Tyler, he had been to rehab a bunch of times. It seemed like they had lost the muse.
Run DMC was A+ in the rap world, but hadn't really crossed over.
They had like a flimsy commitment from both groups. Neither one of them wanted to do it. They were a little apprehensive.
Somehow, the chemistry worked, and they never met before. Again, that's the incredible part about this.
These were these strange bedfellows who completed each other genre perfectly.
It was an immediate smash hit.
People watching MTV just could not get enough of it. They were playing this video twice an hour. So they were playing this thing 30, 40 times a day.
They reached a white audience, which they never were able to reach before, and that's what brought hip-hop into the mainstream.
Every phone in Hollywood rang. Hey, you know that act that you haven't been able to book in 15 years? I found some kids from New York that want to do a rap with them.
The guys who sang Love in an Elevator would probably be repairing elevators right now. Walk This Way revitalized them.
The following year, 1987, Aerosmith puts out Permanent Vacation. It sells 5 million copies, 10 times more than the previous album.
Because of Walk This Way, I think a whole generation of white kids learned that rap could be awesome. And I think a whole generation of black kids learned that Steven Tyler dresses like a pirate hooker.
Good night. Big Dundee from Australia. How are you?
Who could forget Crocodile Dundee?
Fell in love with that man.
No one in America had seen a character like this before.
It was a classic fish out of water tale.
Like Splash for people who are hot for Australian dudes.
Mick Dundee is on the streets of New York City, which back in the 80s, wasn't exactly the safest place to be.
When he's walking around in this leather vest with his chest exposed, is a pretty run-of-the-mill outfit in the East Village of New York.
That's a knife. That's a knife.
Never give an Australian a chance to get the jump on you because, again, they are fully loaded with knives.
Well, we might just have to give you one for free.
Yeah. One more.
And the movie wasn't expected to do very well because Paul Hogan wasn't a sort of household name that can carry a film.
It was the second biggest film of the year, a massive hit, I think a surprise to everyone, and all of a sudden, everybody was Australia crazy.
We get INXS, we get a comedian named Yahoo Serious.
Kylie Minogue dusts off the locomotion, but it worked.
Before you know it, Outback Steakhouses are like Starbucks. You can't get away from one.
That bloomin' onion? Bloomin' genius.
I feel the need for speed.
Yeah, I saw Top Gun. Who didn't?
The movie truly was perfect.
Nobody cooler than Tom Cruise in Top Gun.
Men loved it because they got to see real men in action fighting against Russian MiGs up in the air. And women liked it because, well, the volleyball scene.
Val Kilmer with the shirts off.
You know, you don't see volleyball like that unless you're in a male video store.
This was the greatest film to promote the U.S. government, our military, America.
Everybody who watched Top Gun for at least 2 weeks thought they were going to be a fighter pilot.
Everyone suddenly had a bomber jacket, the aviator sunglasses.
Top Gun gave me a lot of unrealistic goals. There is height, weight requirements to be a pilot.
These guys are fighter pilots, tasked with defending the country. They spend most of the movie getting drunk, singing karaoke, and hitting on women.
I'm still holding out that someone will sing The Righteous Brothers to me someday.
Well, looking up at the sky tonight, it wasn't a bird, it wasn't a plane, it wasn't Superman people were looking for.
Halley's Comet showed up once every 75 years. It's like being a New York Jets fan.
Thank Haley for, or Halley as they're saying nowadays. When I was a kid it was Haley, now it's Holly.
Apparently it's pronounced Halley's Comet, but I'm just gonna go with Haley's Comet. Who the hell is Halley?
The buildup for Halley's Comet was massive. We kind of thought that the comet was going to be whizzing by our bedroom window.
My canteen had water in it. I had binoculars. I had a blanket. I was going to sit out in the front yard and wait for that great moment.
We devoted so much school time to what was supposed to be a big event, and we really didn't get the return on our investment, to be honest with you.
We almost named our first child, who is now known as Peter Ducey, at the White House. We almost named him Haley Ducey, which really would have been different.
So if the weather is clear, the comet should be visible. How visible? Well, not so visible.
There was so much hype surrounding the arrival of the comet, but nobody actually saw it. Like, if we're being honest, we never really saw it because the visibility was so bad.
Well, you think you guys had it bad, but we're even farther north in Canada where we had no chance of seeing Halley's Comet at all.
If you were a scientist with a high-powered telescope, you had a wonderful evening. But for those of us on the ground, we're like, I didn't even make it. I fell asleep.
Hello, Peter.
Hello, how's it going?
How different would your life be if you would have been named Haley?
That's tough. I don't know.
Okay, thanks for that really hilarious answer. Okay.
Am I on speakerphone?
Yes, you're on speakerphone.
Oh, you gotta tell people when they're on speakerphone.
I'm your father.
It's time for another Who Can Forget pop quiz. What syndicated TV show that debuted in 1986 was shot at the Riviera Casino in Las Vegas? Was it A, The Oprah Winfrey Show, B, A Current Affair, or C, Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling? The answer is C, Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, also known as GLOW.
We'll call it the Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, and some of them will be gorgeous, but a lot of them will be debauched funhouse characters that'll tell weird butt jokes and sing rap songs. And somebody in a pitch meeting was like, yeah, I like that.
August 26th, just after dawn, a cyclist in Central Park discovered the body of 18-year-old Jennifer Levin.
There's scratch marks, and she was strangled apparently, and it just was a horrific scene.
It did not take them long to finger Robert Chambers. In fact, he and Levin had been at a bar called Dorian's the night before, and then they were seen leaving together.
And when they bring him into custody, they see scratch marks. His excuse? My cat did it, which didn't exactly fly too well.
Jennifer's alleged murderer, Robert Chambers, has admitted on videotape that he accidentally choked her during rough sex.
The whole country became mesmerized with the case.
When you throw those words together, preppy, rich, Central Park, entitled, suddenly it is a headline for months and months and months.
Just the premise alone was made for a Lifetime movie.
You have this good-looking guy, looks like he's at a central casting as far as every bad guy that we saw in every movie during the 80s.
If he wasn't busy killing women, he could have been fighting the Karate Kid.
He was not a sympathetic suspect. Number one, he had been kicked out of a couple of schools for drugs and all kinds of issues.
And he had a smugness about him, almost a sneer.
Somehow, Chambers gets out on bail, and while he is out on bail, you would think he would just keep a very low profile.
There's a video that had come out.
He decides to take a Barbie doll, for instance, and twists off the head and says, oops.
No, my client's perfectly normal, Your Honor. He just likes to behead Barbie dolls, like all sane and rational people who would never harm a woman.
He immediately tried to put it on the victim.
They went after Jennifer as if she was a hooker who deserved what Robert Chambers gave her.
The jury deliberates for 9 days, and they can't come to a verdict as far as the murder charge.
The prosecution finally throws its hands up and allows Chambers to plead guilty to manslaughter. He's sentenced to 15 years. He's released in 2003, but gets right back into the clink in 2005 and 2007 for drug issues.
And to this day, right now, he is behind bars.
Where they're not allowed to wear polo shirts.
Oh, I absolutely remember when the Challenger blew up.
It was one of those moments where it's ingrained in your memory for the rest of your life.
I remember we got sent home from school.
Somebody ran into my office. They had just happened to have the TV on.
We were on the dock in the west coast of Florida. We look up in a clear blue sky and see this kind of a ray.
We heard the news and it's like, that can't possibly be true.
My generation grew up without being aware of the dangers of spaceflight.
It was like routine. It was like hopping in a car and just driving off to space.
We had a shuttle return like 2 weeks earlier. That's how often we were banging this out. Cape Canaveral was like LaGuardia back then.
We have main engine start.
This was going to be a very special space flight because they selected a teacher, Krista McAuliffe, to be an astronaut. I mean, they really picked a real social studies teacher.
I think there was about 11,000 people that were trying for that position. She got it partly because of her credentials, but partly because of her personality.
Pretty much every school in America had the TVs on because it was the first teacher in space.
Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Roger, roll, Challenger.
And then 73 seconds later, what just happened?
Challenger, go with throttle up. Challenger, go with throttle up.
People were confused at first because when a rocket ship takes off, there's always a lot of smoke.
Through a child's eyes, as you see that famous cloud as the rockets are going in two different directions, you still aren't sure.
Stunned, shocked, saddened. Those are the words heard around the world in wake of the tragedy that struck the world. And the shockwaves are still being felt for the 7 astronauts who died aboard the Space Shuttle Challenger.
The party had been interrupted because the 80s really did feel like a party, and there was like this collective mourning period.
This is one of those moments in American history when all Americans could share in the same emotional intensity over the same event at the same time.
That evening, President Reagan was supposed to deliver the State of the Union address, but instead, he went live from the Oval Office.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd planned to speak to you tonight to report on the State of the Union. But the events of earlier today have led me to change those plans.
America at that time needed the president to talk about it, and he did, beautifully, eloquently, in a way that touched everybody in the same way.
We will never forget them, nor the last time we saw them this morning, as they prepared for their journey and waved goodbye, and slipped the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God.
Ronald Reagan was one of the few presidents that you could picture in that situation who could throw his arms around the country and say, it's going to be okay.
The country needed a strong voice. We needed a bipartisan voice, and we needed a little bit of fatherhood at that moment, and I think he delivered that.
No one expected it would be cheap to restore the Statue of Liberty. After all, she's been standing out there in the New York Harbor for almost 100 years.
I remember how patriotic it was to restore the Statue of Liberty.
Lady Liberty apparently needed a little help standing up. I can't blame her. Most of the ladies I know that age prefer to sit.
How good are you going to look at 100? You're going to need to get some work done.
The workers had a lot of work to do. They had to repair holes in her copper skin.
They replaced old rusted out parts with stainless steel.
All of these construction workers who used to whistle at women were now on top of this giant woman. It was like this manifestation of every dirty thing they'd ever yelled from a job site.
The countdown is on. From July 3rd through July 6th, the giant birthday celebrations for a giant of a lady will take place.
So they had to do something big. I mean, this is the Statue of Liberty. She's turning 100. You can't just have Willard Scott announce her birthday on the Today Show.
It was really a spectacular celebration. I mean, it was one of the best celebrations America's ever seen.
It was maximum strength America.
It wasn't just President Ronald Reagan. We had Francois Mitterrand from France. John Williams did the score. Celebrities like Elizabeth Taylor, Frank Sinatra.
Happy birthday, Lady Liberty, you cuckoo chick.
Anytime Neil Diamond is there singing, it's a party.
They're coming to America. He can do it.
They had the tall ships turn out.
When you see all these ships one by one, this armada coming into New York Harbor and the new Statue of Liberty there, it was something to behold on your 24-inch RCA TV, no question.
At the time, it was the biggest fireworks display in the history of the United States, and Ronald Reagan himself is the one who pushed the button.
The country was together then, man. It was just a great national effort that made Americans proud.
That was great. We need some more of that right about now.